Tandi Wright is one of the busiest actresses in the business. She's currently on the big screen in Kiwi Flyer and on the small screen in the popular TV series Nothing Trivial.
That's Jules.
Cool dude.
He likes to think so.
Happy memories.
Like the time he went out for nappies and disappeared for, 18 hours.
You really did that?
And worse, he was so unreliable. It just drove me mad.
You must have loved him.
It was more like living in a tumble dryer.
I thought you said a tidal wave.
I'm not that girl anymore.
Tandi's also a spokesperson for Actors Equity, which is organising a workshop with American casting agents to help our actors find work overseas to fill the downtime between jobs in New Zealand. There were more than 300 applications for the 40 places. That comes as no surprise to the union, which says many of our actors work trans-Tasman year-round. Not Tandi, though, at least not yet.
I am lucky in that I have had a bit of a good run, but it's that funny thing where it's always slightly deceptive because, Nothing Trivial is 4 months of very intense work, and then I might not work for the entire rest of the year, and, never quite sure what's coming up, and people always say, "Oh, you've got so much work," and I nod and smile.
Would you consider working overseas?
Yeah, absolutely I would. I think, it's very tricky actually making a living as an actor in New Zealand, and really only a handful of people manage it. And I think it's just one of those things that it's risk management, really. You're probably wise to have your eggs in several baskets, and I think, if one could have a trans-Tasman career or work somewhere else as well as in the New Zealand market, then having a career as an actor just becomes a bit more viable.
I think Actors Equity is noticing that in terms of their membership numbers, that more and more actors are working trans-Tasman. And we've had some high-profile ones, haven't we, with Chelsea Crayford-Preston and Danielle Cormack in the Underbelly series recently. So, and I think quite a few of our actors have actually been in some of the soaps over there, or the series there. Yeah. So it feels like New Zealand actors have a good reputation in Australia.
Yes, I think so. I'm sort of waiting for the backlash to come from that side of the Tasman, but it doesn't seem to have yet. And I think the other thing is that, our actors work here and get to a very high level, but they have an anonymity over there which is useful because they arrive in that market and no one's seen them or has preconceptions about them, but they have all this experience. So I think that's kind of great for some of the Australian producers.
One of the issues that seems to be facing New Zealand actors is this issue of residuals. And I thought I'd just look at that with you because I think our actors aren't paid residuals. Let's explain how this works.
Yeah, so New Zealand actors are among the only actors in the English-speaking world who don't get paid residuals. In every other comparable country, they do get residuals. Residuals are when a program or a film that you are in is on-sold. The profits from that sale, a very small percentage will go to the actors in other countries, and that becomes an absolutely vital, small, ongoing income stream for those actors. And because we don't have that in New Zealand, it's one of the reasons why it's incredibly hard to have an ongoing career here, because a small, ongoing kind of drip feed like that in terms of income could be the difference between meeting your rent that week or not. It's just one of the ways that we feel we could make life for actors in New Zealand a little bit easier. And it's also one of those things that's kind of internationally recognised as a right and reasonable thing that actors are entitled to. So it's something that Equity here is working towards.
So have we never paid residuals, or is this something that's come in the last few years?
No, we have, but in about 1987, the unions got completely destroyed. And since then, really, the residuals have gone out the window. And for a while, people said, oh, we'll pay you more up front. But slowly over time, our conditions have just got relatively worse. So now we're not paid, significantly more, and neither do we have residuals. So we sort of feel that it's time to look at that situation. The reality is we will never earn loads of money in New Zealand as actors, and that's fine. That's our choice, and we love doing the job. But there are ways that we can ease it a little, I think, and make it a little more possible to remain as an actor without having to give it all up and be a waitress.
Are there other conditions that make it a bit tougher on New Zealand actors here? I mean, we know the government changes that came in over the Hobbit in terms of conditions and contracts, that sort of thing. Has that had a flow-on effect for actors?
That has more long-term effects. To be honest, some of those changes will affect crew more than actors. Something that we could do, which would be fairly inexpensive for the government, are things like we have some quite significant tax incentive schemes for attracting large budget productions to New Zealand. And other countries have a system where when those tax incentives are offered, there's a sort of a quota system for the actors involved, and that, you know, they'll say, yes, you can bring in 3 lead actors from overseas, but you must use 1 New Zealander in a lead actor position. And yes, you can bring in 2 B actors, but you must use 2 New Zealanders in B positions. And what that does over time is it builds up a kind of, a base of experience here among actors, which means that we have world-class actors living here. But it also creates a kind of a star system, as it has in Australia, and that eventually those stars are able to attract investment and they are able to attract productions to that country. So, you know, it's the fact that, you know, Australia has Kate Blanchett and Nicole Kidman and all those huge big film stars. It's not a mistake. You know, that was a clear strategy that would in fact be a good kind of economic move for Australia.
Well, we've just had our Prime Minister, of course, over in Hollywood talking to studio bosses. The sense I get is that we would really give them pretty much anything they want to come here, and I'm not sure that putting restrictions on quotas for New Zealand actors fits in with the current philosophy, shall I say. And what's your impression?
Yeah, I'm afraid you may be right, but I think it's a very short-sighted view. I think that this government is doing a lot to sort of lure money here under whatever circumstances. And I think when you look long term, what we need to be doing is much more fostering a local industry. So it's great that those productions come, but when they leave, we can't all just be left floundering and have to go back into hibernation. We need to make sure that our skill base is enriched by having those productions here, and that the local industry is active in an ongoing way so that people can make a living and get better.
Another reason that our actors go overseas, of course, is the opportunities. You know, we are the size that we are, and Hollywood has this great appeal. And I think Carl Urbana's perhaps the latest star. In fact, he's done very well for himself. But you know, Jermaine's had roles, Rhys Darby. I mean, all sorts of actors have had roles. Cliff Curtis and Tim Morrison. So there is always going to be that appeal of trying to get roles either in Hollywood or in the UK. I mean, do we give enough skills? Do we give enough encouragement for our actors to try those big opportunities?
It's really tough for us, I think, because usually getting to that position where those actors got to take those roles, it involves quite a financial investment. You know, some of those guys will have gone to Hollywood and really done the hard yards in LA, sitting around for months, working whatever jobs they could, or having saved all their life savings here and taken that to LA and put that on the line while they're trying to get those jobs. But that is the risk that you take. You know, that's your personal choice. I think that the more we have a kind of fluid marketplace where actors work here, they work in Australia, they work overseas, generally, the better it is, the better it's going to be for all of us, because, you know, of course, the more you work, the better you get, like any trade. And if you do work overseas, you come back home and you bring all those skills with you. But I mean, I have to say, I don't know any actors who've left New Zealand because they wanted to leave New Zealand. I know a lot of actors who've gone because they want to work.
Yeah, and as you say, the opportunities here are limited. And in fact, on the show today, we're looking at the fact that Spartacus is wrapping up in Auckland, after the last 4 kind of intensive years. And that's been perhaps the equivalent of Wellington's Lord of the Rings and Hobbit series. You know, several years of really intense work, great opportunities for cast and crew, guaranteed income and a great skills base. But when that finishes, it feels like there's going to be a big hole, a big gap left.
Yeah, there will.
And
there
that's
really
a bit
will.
scary, isn't it?
It's incredibly scary, and particularly for crew, I think, because their jobs have been ongoing. You know, actors are perhaps a bit more used to the cut and thrust in that way. You know, we often our jobs will just be a couple of days on jobs like that. But the crew will have been employed, for the majority of months in the year, and it's going to be tough for those families now. Yeah.
Do you have any sense of any other big productions coming up? I mean, there's always sort of whispers. I'm not not trying to get to break any secrets, but is there any sense that there's going to be something to replace that for Auckland?
I haven't heard of anything concrete at the moment. There are whispers, as you say, but I don't think there's anything coming, straight away.
That's the hard thing, isn't it, when you've had this intense work? And it was like that, I think it's fair to say, with The Lord of the Rings. It was full on, and then once those movies are out, it just seemed to be very, very quiet. And then we had Avatar, and then, of course, The Hobbit. But those gap years are hard because you've got the skills, you've got all these people who've been skilled and employed, and where do they go? What do they do?
And that's the reason I think we really need to look at how we look after our local industry and how we make sure that is thriving and prosperous. And, sure, we're never going to make huge amounts of money in that, but if we are constantly working, then we're constantly getting better, and we're all going to be in a position to, when those big overseas productions do come, will we match fit? And I mean that not just for the actors, but for the crew, everybody.
We had Jane Wrightson from New Zealand On Air on the program just last week talking about what she sees as a golden era in New Zealand drama, and Nothing Trivial that you're in is I think rating through the roof, isn't it? Yeah,
it's doing really well, yeah.
And we've had the Platinum Fund. So we were looking at ticking off all these very successful drama series. There's Go Girls, and there's the Almighty Johnsons. I mean, there've been these long series, Outrageous Fortunes, come to an end. From your perspective as an actress who works on screen and on stage, do you see it as a golden era looking back? Well, and forward, perhaps?
Yeah, it's a funny thing. I mean, I think what's clear is that New Zealanders love watching New Zealand product. And to that end, I think we need to invest more in it. And I think it becomes clear that our own, the New Zealand sense of self-worth, having great television made by New Zealanders for New Zealanders really feeds into that. Has quite a difference. Quite an impact on our self-esteem is what I'm trying to say. So it's not just nonsense. Investing in the arts is a serious business. And I think we need to do more of that. I don't think it's okay that we have, a couple of years of flurry and then nothing. I think there needs to be a kind of an ongoing strategy. But in terms of television, I think definitely our game is raising, and we need to train up more writers and just keep on rolling, because clearly there's a market for it. New Zealanders want to see it.
From the actor's perspective, when I was talking to Jane, I mentioned This Is Not My Life as a series that I really enjoyed, again, that you were in, and was very disappointed that it wasn't picked up and run with again, because there was so much possibilities for that stories to continue. It looked so great. It was well acted, well written. And she expressed her disappointment that it didn't get another life. And she said, there'd been phone calls, but in the end, the channel just didn't go for it. From your perspective and that team that worked so hard on making that program, that must be devastating. And when you're waiting to hear, whatever series you're in, if you're waiting to hear that is it going to get another life or not, that must be really hard on everyone.
Yeah, that was really devastating, and particularly so because I think we all knew that that show was really great, and it was ambitious. It was trying to do something new, and it was quite arty, and it wasn't spoon-feeding the audience. The audience had to do quite a lot of hard work, and it was political. It was showing the audience a vision of the future that they might want to think about, if they wanted to go down that road. So I think for many reasons that was a shame it didn't go ahead, and I think a lot of that at the time was probably that the ratings system had not caught up with the way people were viewing. A lot of people were watching online at that time. They were watching on demand, and they weren't. At that stage, they weren't able to factor that into their ratings figures. I think that's getting better now, but still, it's still really important for the network to get bums on seats at 8:30 p.m. on a Thursday night or whatever your time slot is. Otherwise, they don't get the advertising revenue. So I think that's something we have to address, because I think a show like that, and there are many more like that, they need to have some kind of we need to be able to acknowledge that they have an intrinsic value, and even if they are not earning the prime dollar at the prime time slot, that they are important in their own way. I think we need to, we need to have a more sophisticated system, really, by which we greenlight projects.
Actress and Actors Equity spokesperson Tandi Wright. Actress and Actors Equity spokesperson Tandi Wright. Actress and Actors